You think a 20-foot crocodile is the ultimate nightmare. You picture those cold, dead eyes floating in the murky swamps, and you feel a shiver crawl down your spine. But you are wrong. You are so terribly wrong. Imagine facing a 50-foot ocean god, a 30,000-pound machine of pure, unadulterated violence, trapped in knee-deep water. Imagine a creature that used to chew on giant sea turtles like they were brittle crackers, now slithering through the shallow black mud of the Florida wetlands. This is not a battle. This is an execution. Welcome to the Florida Everglades. To the untrained eye, this is a vast, beautiful river of grass. But to a biologist, it is a ruthless, claustrophobic arena. It is a slow-moving, shallow sheet of water, barely 4 feet deep in most places, hiding a complex web of modern apex predators. For millions of years, the rules here have been simple. The American alligator rules the freshwater. The American crocodile rules the saltwater. And recently, the invasive Burmese python has claimed the dry banks. They are the undisputed kings of the modern swamp. They are the monsters that keep humans awake at night. But listen to the swamp right now. Listen closely. It is completely, horrifyingly silent. The frogs have stopped croaking. The wading birds have abandoned their nests, taking to the sky in a panicked, chaotic frenzy. Even the insects have gone quiet. Nature has a terrifying way of sensing when the natural order is about to be violently ripped apart. Beneath the surface of the dark, tannin-stained water, the mud is trembling. A shadow is moving. It is a shadow too large, too impossible for this shallow, fragile environment. A creature from the late Cretaceous period has somehow crossed the boundary of time, plunging straight into the heart of modern Florida. The Mosasaurus, a marine reptile so massive, it defies the very limits of this ecosystem. In the open ocean, it was an elegant, terrifying torpedo of muscle and teeth. But here in the shallow swamps, it becomes something entirely different. It becomes a crawling, thrashing, unstoppable force of destruction, displacing thousands of gallons of water and crushing the roots of ancient mangrove trees with every sweep of its massive tail. The water turns pitch black with churning mud. The black water nightmare has officially begun, and the false kings of Florida are about to meet a true prehistoric god. Before the apocalypse arrived, the Florida Everglades was a finely tuned machine of death. At the top of this brutal hierarchy sits the American alligator. These creatures are armored submarines of the swamp. Growing up to 15 feet in length and weighing over 1,000 pounds, they are prehistoric holdovers in their own right, perfectly designed for this claustrophobic environment. They are ambush predators, lying in wait beneath a blanket of green duckweed, leaving only their cold, reptilian eyes exposed above the surface. They are completely invisible until the water erupts in a violent strike. Their jaws snap shut with a bite force of nearly 3,000 pounds per square inch. That is enough pressure to shatter a thick turtle shell like a piece of brittle candy, or snap the femur of a full-grown deer in a fraction of a second. Their backs are lined with thick, bony plates called scutes, acting as a natural suit of armor against the bites of rival males or desperate prey. They are the undeniable lords of the shallow fresh water, ruling with a quiet, lethal patience. Further south, where the slow-moving river meets the salty ocean, the American crocodile patrols the brackish, twisted roots of the mangroves. They are larger, leaner, and possess a far more aggressive temperament than their freshwater cousins. Reaching lengths of 20 feet, they glide through the murky water with a sinister, pale green grace. Their teeth interlock perfectly, designed to snatch, tear, and drag large prey into the deep channels. They are the apex predators of the coastal wetlands, arrogant and territorial, fearing absolutely nothing that swims, crawls, or walks into their domain. But the Everglades has also been conquered by an alien invader, a creature that has already proven how vulnerable this ecosystem can be. The Burmese python, brought across the world and carelessly released into the wild, these massive serpents have rewritten the rules of the swamp, reaching lengths of over 20 feet and packing hundreds of pounds of pure, constricting muscle. The python is a silent, creeping nightmare in the sawgrass. They do not rely on a crushing bite or sudden speed. Instead, they ambush their prey from the shadows, wrapping thick, suffocating coils around the victim's chest. They wait for the prey to exhale, and then they tighten, constricting further with every desperate breath, until the heart simply stops beating from the immense pressure. They have decimated the local mammal population, leaving vast stretches of the swamp eerily empty. They have even been known to engage in grueling, hours-long battles with adult alligators, swallowing the armored reptiles whole, expanding their flexible jaws to grotesque, impossible proportions. Together, these three predators maintain a delicate, terrifying balance of power. They are perfectly adapted to the shallow, murky waters of Florida. They know every submerged log, every hidden channel, every mudbank. They are covered in thick scales, heavily armored, and possess the instinctual lethality honed over millions of years of brutal evolution. If any other creature steps into the swamp after dark, they are completely at the mercy of these cold-blooded killers. But against the massive, churning shadow now tearing through the sawgrass, all of their thick armor, all of their bone-crushing bite force, and all of their evolutionary perfection mean absolutely nothing. They are the false kings of Florida, and they are about to learn, in the most violent way imaginable, what it feels like to be reduced to nothing more than a localized food source. The true king of the ancient oceans has arrived, and its appetite is endless. To understand the absolute massacre that is about to unfold, you must first understand the anatomy of the god that has just fallen into the swamp. The Mosasaurus was not a dinosaur. It was a marine reptile, a true sea monster, an apex predator built to hunt in the limitless, deep blue expanses of the late Cretaceous oceans. It reached lengths of 50 feet or more. It weighed over 30,000 pounds. In the open ocean, it used its powerful, elongated tail and 4 paddle-like flippers to propel itself at terrifying speeds, striking from the dark depths like a biological torpedo. But the Florida Everglades is not the open ocean. It is a slow-moving sheet of water, averaging only 4 feet in depth. When a 30,000-pound leviathan is dropped into knee-deep water, it does not swim. It plows. It crawls. It destroys. The Mosasaurus is forced to drag its massive and barrel-shaped torso across the limestone bedrock, ripping up thick mats of sawgrass and snapping the ancient, intertwined roots of mangrove trees as if they were fragile twigs. Its sheer mass displaces so much water that it creates a localized tidal wave of thick, black mud wherever it moves. The claustrophobic environment strips away the creature's grace, leaving only pure, terrifying, unadulterated brute force. It is suffocating in the shallow water, and that makes it infinitely more dangerous. It is angry, it is disoriented, and above all else, it is starving. A predator of this magnitude requires an astronomical amount of calories simply to keep its massive heart beating, and it has the perfect tools to harvest those calories. Look at its jaws. The skull of a full-grown Mosasaurus is roughly the size of a small car. It is equipped with double-hinged jaws that can expand outward, allowing it to swallow massive prey completely whole. When those jaws slam shut, they deliver a bite force estimated at over 13,000 pounds per square inch. That is more than 4 times the crushing power of the largest American alligator. But the true horror lies in the teeth. The Mosasaurus does not have flat teeth for chewing. It has rows of massive, thick, conical teeth designed for one single purpose: to pierce thick armor and hold on to thrashing prey. They are heavily reinforced to withstand the impact of crunching through the shells of giant prehistoric sea turtles or the thick bones of other marine reptiles. The scales of an alligator or the thick muscle of a python offer absolutely zero resistance against these armor-piercing spikes. And if a victim somehow manages to survive the initial bone-shattering bite, the nightmare only gets worse. The Mosasaurus possesses a second set of teeth hidden deep in the roof of its mouth. These are the pterygoid teeth. They are curved sharply backward, acting like the barbs on a fishing hook. Once prey is caught, these inner teeth ratchet the victim down its throat. There is no escape. Struggling only pushes you deeper into the dark, crushing abyss of its stomach. Now, imagine this colossal engine of destruction blind in the murky water, relying on its sensory organs to detect the vibrations of the panicked animals around it. Every movement in the swamp, every splash of a fleeing crocodile, every slither of a python in the mud sends a clear, undeniable signal to the Mosasaurus. The dinner bell has been rung. The swamp is too small. The water is too shallow. The monster is too big. And the massacre is about to begin. Deep in the heart of a sawgrass prairie, the first fatal encounter begins to take shape. A massive 20-foot Burmese python is slithering desperately through the shallow water. It is a thick, muscular coil of pure predatory instinct, seeking higher ground to escape the sudden, violent tremors that are shaking the very bedrock of the swamp. But its path crosses with a territorial giant. A 15-foot male American alligator, an ancient king of this specific, sun-baked channel, blocks the way. The alligator issues a deep, guttural bellow, hissing and vibrating the water over its back, warning the invasive python to retreat immediately. Normally, this would be a tense, calculated standoff between two modern apex predators circling each other, waiting for the other to make a fatal mistake. But tonight, they are not the hunters. They are merely the appetizer. A tidal wave of thick, foul-smelling mud suddenly surges down the narrow channel, pushing a wall of black water ahead of it. The tall sawgrass is flattened instantly, ripped out by the roots and pushed aside like wet paper. The alligator hisses loudly, turning its armored head toward the disturbance, fully expecting to fight a rival male alligator invading its territory. Instead, a massive scarred snout breaks the surface. It is gray, leathery, and impossibly huge. The Mosasaurus does not see the alligator or the python in the murky darkness. It does not need to. It feels the frantic vibrations of their heavy bodies displacing the shallow water. It senses the terrified electrical impulses of their rapidly beating hearts. The python, acting on pure, desperate defensive instinct, strikes first. It launches its massive head, sinking its recurved teeth into the thick skin of the Mosasaurus's lower jaw, and instantly begins to wrap its thick, heavy coils around the invader's snout. A 20-foot python can squeeze the life out of a full-grown deer or a wild boar in minutes. But against the 30,000-pound sea monster, it is nothing more than a minor, pathetic annoyance. It is like a fragile rubber band attempting to crush a solid steel pipe. The Mosasaurus does not even bother to thrash. It simply opens its cavernous jaws, easily snapping the python's spine in half, as the snake's muscular body is stretched far beyond its biological limits. With a sickening, wet crunch, the sea monster bites down. The giant python is severed completely in two. Thick, dark blood erupts into the water, painting the mud a horrific shade of red. The heavy, metallic smell of fresh blood instantly triggers a blind predatory response in the alligator. Driven by territorial rage and millions of years of instinct, the 15-foot reptile lunges forward, clamping its jaws onto the Mosasaurus's front flipper with nearly 3,000 pounds of crushing force. The alligator immediately attempts a death roll, the signature, devastating maneuver designed to rip limbs directly from their sockets. The alligator spins violently, churning the bloody water into a foam. But the Mosasaurus does not yield. Its flipper is a solid paddle of dense bone and thick muscle, perfectly built to withstand the crushing, agonizing depths of the prehistoric ocean. The alligator's death roll barely twists the monster's limb. It is an entirely futile effort. The ocean god slowly turns its massive head, its cold reptilian eyes finally locking onto the insignificant creature biting its flipper. The Mosasaurus opens its jaws, revealing a cavern of jagged, armor-piercing teeth dripping with the python's blood. It strikes with the blinding speed of a striking viper, an impossible movement for a creature so massive. The jaws clamp down directly over the alligator's heavily armored back. The thick, bony scutes that have protected this resilient species for millions of years offer absolutely zero resistance. The sound is deafening. It sounds like a heavy oak tree snapping violently in half under the immense weight of a hurricane. 13,000 pounds of pressure completely crush the alligator's ribcage, instantly collapsing its lungs and obliterating its spine in a single, devastating motion. The alligator lets out one final, choked hiss of air before the life leaves its eyes forever. The Mosasaurus lifts its massive head, hoisting the 15-foot, 1,000-pound alligator out of the water as easily as a stray dog lifting a small, brittle bone. The second set of pterygoid teeth deep in the roof of the monster's mouth engage, ratcheting the limp, bleeding carcass deep into its dark throat. It swallows the undisputed king of the swamp completely whole in 3 massive, horrifying gulps. The water slowly settles, now permanently stained a deep, rusty crimson. The first blood has been drawn in the mud, but the monster is still starving, and the scent of the slaughter is spreading rapidly across the entire wetland, calling every predator in the swamp to their impending doom. The Mosasaurus is victorious. The water is painted crimson with the blood of the modern swamp kings. But this victory is a deadly, fatal illusion. The Florida Everglades is not just a fragile ecosystem filled with easy prey. It is a living, breathing, hostile entity. And it possesses a weapon far more powerful, far more insidious than any bone-crushing bite force or thick reptilian armor. The environment itself is about to strike back. As the long afternoon wears on, the humid air grows impossibly heavy. The sky turns a bruised, violent shade of purple. A massive tropical storm is brewing off the coast, pulling the water away from the marshlands, causing the shallow tidal channels of the swamp to rapidly drain. The water level drops drastically, falling from 4 feet to a mere 18 inches of sticky, suffocating mud. For a creature adapted to the boundless depths of the open ocean, this sudden drought is a death sentence. In the deep water, buoyancy supports the colossal bulk of the sea monster. Without that support, gravity becomes an invisible, crushing enemy. The Mosasaurus bottoms out. Its massive, unyielding belly drags heavily across the sharp limestone bedrock beneath the mud. It tries to push forward, its 4 muscular flippers frantically churning the thick sludge, but it is deeply, hopelessly stuck. The sheer weight of its own 30,000-pound body is now pressing down relentlessly on its lungs. With every desperate, ragged breath, the monster has to lift thousands of pounds of blubber and dense muscle just to expand its chest. It is slowly, agonizingly suffocating under its own immense gravity. It thrashes violently, roaring into the darkening sky, releasing a terrifying, guttural sound that has not been heard on this planet for 66 million years. The desperate thrashing churns the bloody water, sending out massive, rhythmic ripples of distress across the sawgrass prairie. And in the unforgiving wetlands, weakness is an open invitation. The scent of the slaughtered python and the crushed alligator has traveled for miles on the humid wind. Now, combined with the frantic, dying vibrations of a stranded titan, the dinner bell has not just been rung. It is screaming into the darkness. From the dark, twisting roots of the mangrove trees, glowing reptilian eyes begin to appear. First 10, then 50, then hundreds. A massive, unimaginable swarm of American alligators, drawn by the undeniable scent of blood and absolute vulnerability, converges on the stranded ocean god. Individually, they are nothing more than crunchy appetizers to the Mosasaurus. But together, driven by a primal ravenous hunger and territorial frenzy, they form an unstoppable army of biological scavengers. The swarm descends upon the trapped leviathan. They do not attack the heavily armored, cavernous head. They target the soft, exposed flesh of the underbelly and the trailing rear flippers. Hundreds of jaws clamp down simultaneously. The Mosasaurus roars in agonizing pain, summoning the absolute last reserves of its fading ancient strength. It sweeps its massive tail, instantly launching half a dozen alligators into the air, shattering their spines upon impact with the trees. It lunges forward, its massive jaws crushing 3 more reptiles into an unrecognizable bloody pulp. But for every single alligator it destroys, 10 more take their place. They latch onto the sea monster, spinning violently in synchronized death rolls, tearing away massive chunks of blubber and dark flesh. The prehistoric god is bleeding from 1,000 different wounds. Its vision blurs as the severe oxygen deprivation takes hold. It is choking on the thick, foul mud, drowning in the shallowest water on Earth, being slowly eaten alive by creatures it considered nothing more than insignificant pests. The mighty Mosasaurus, the undisputed apex predator of the Cretaceous oceans, gives one final deafening bellow. A tragic, gurgling roar of defiance that echoes across the dark sawgrass. Then its massive head collapses heavily into the bloody mud. The swamp has won. The aftermath is a scene of unimaginable ecological devastation. When the tropical storm finally breaks, washing over the blood-soaked marsh, the colossal skeleton of the Mosasaurus is slowly picked clean. The ocean god has become an ecological black hole, paradoxically feeding the very ecosystem it attempted to conquer. Its massive carcass will sustain the surviving alligators, the vultures, and the insects for months to come. The Florida Everglades remains undefeated. It is a brutal, unyielding reminder that no matter how big, how strong, or how ancient a predator might be, nature always finds a terrifying way to restore the balance. The swamp swallows the weak, and it buries the strong. What prehistoric nightmare should we drop into the modern world next? Could a megalodon survive the freezing depths of the Arctic Circle against a highly intelligent pod of killer whales? Or perhaps we should unleash the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex onto the open, unforgiving plains of the African savanna to face a pride of lions? Leave your answer in the comments below. If you want to survive the next bloody simulation, make sure to subscribe to the Animal Ranking Hub. The wild is completely unforgiving, and the next slaughter is already waiting.